6:30. I have a hard stop then, so I will be extra keeping us on time. And maybe Terry, do you want to do our roll call?
Sure. Seth Barnes,
Present virtually.
perfect, thank you. Dave Bugney,
Present by video.
thank you. Adam Coble,
Present by video.
Stacy Detweiler,
Present by video.
Julie Furman,
Present by video.
Wendy Gerlach,
Present by video.
Kate Wells.
Hi, Terry. This is Sam Banks, and I'll be sitting in for Kate.
Great, thank you. Casey Kula, I think he's trying to get in, but he's
present
not.
by phone.
Oh, you are? Okay. You don't show up on my
Yeah,
screen
thank
as being here, but thanks for
Just
letting
'cause
us
I'm
know
a
you're
phone.
here.
I'm not actually just a phone, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Jason Robeson,
Present by video.
Josh Seeds. Seems like Josh is not.
Present by video.
Oh, you are. Somehow I missed you. Amanda Sullivan Astor
Present by video.
and Will Tucker.
Present by video.
All right, that makes everyone here. And Stacy, would you like me to go ahead and pull up that PowerPoint?
Sure, yeah. I think primarily everyone hopefully knows our task for today is really to finalize our research agenda and to meet that July 15th deadline. Then at the end, we were hoping to take a quick few minutes to discuss a potential amphibians work group as a way to keep that effort moving forward and be responsive to questions from IRST to kind of work in parallel as we're trying to hit multiple deadlines and check some things off our list. So I think probably that's what you just pulled up there, Terry.
Yeah.
So unless you had anything else, I think we'll probably just dive right into it if that sounds good.
Yep.
So I guess just super quick framing, I think we had a really productive conversation in our last meeting, and hopefully everyone had a chance to review the documents that Terry sent around. My perception is that we are pretty much there on the Eastern Oregon steep slopes section of the research agenda. I don't believe that we took an official vote or substantial decision, but I think we were all in alignment, and I didn't see any, and I don't know that Terry received any substantive comments on that section. So for the purposes of today, I kind of like to put that aside so we can really focus in on what I think sort of the crux of today is around related to the roads option. Amanda, Casey, and Josh were all on a work group kind of coming out of our meeting, unless I'm forgetting anyone. I think those are the three folks to provide some input to Terry to develop the updated draft. And he sent those out as both a version A and a version B. So I think if you could just advance one slide, Terry, that would be great. Oh, sorry. You wanted to speak to this, I think. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when we talked about sort of agenda for this meeting, wanted to just run through process since this is the first time we've actually voted on a research agenda, the first time a research agenda is going to the board from this committee. And just to remind everyone, of our options. We are, driven, we strive for consensus, but it's not required. And maybe Terry, do you just want to walk through sort of the process pieces for a vote just to set up the conversation?
Sure. So this will be a substantial decision, and when it comes time to vote, like you said, hopefully it's all 10 voting members agree and it's a full consensus. If not, then there needs to be at least 7, and anywhere from 7 to 9, there could be a minority report. That's an option that's laid out in statute in the PFA report. And then it's a possibility that you folks might not come to agree. Nobody wants that option, but it is a possibility, and there could be follow-up conversation as soon as possible, or you could leave as is, which is really not a good idea for anybody for this process. Stacy, Seth, do you want to add anything there?
I think that kind of covers it. I mean, hopefully we're all on the same page that it's in everyone's interest and interest of the committee and the work to try to advance this and meet that deadline. I don't think that's something we would want to have to report back that we haven't met that deadline. So hopefully a little extra pressure for the conversation today, but I think we can get there. And I know we've had some really good dialogue around this in the meetings leading up to it. So I guess with that, unless Seth, did you have anything else kind of framing up top?
Nope, I think you guys have done a good job so far.
Great.
So, oh, sorry, I can't see everyone. So either raise your hand or just chime in, and maybe Emily and Terry can help me also.
Sure. Marta.
So, oh yeah, and Marta, thank you. So I think in just sort of reviewing this, and again, hopefully this is pretty fresh and everyone has had a chance to look at those 2 documents, but I think there's really 2 kind of questions before us specifically related to the roads piece, and really the distinction between the version A that Terry sent around related to roads versus the version B. And I just pulled these out. Can't remember the exact page number it is from both of the documents, but just to really illustrate that they're very similar. And this reflects sort of the compromise discussion or finding some alternative amended version of what the IRST sent us. So version A is really the hydraulic connectivity, including the sediment modeling, whereas version B is the same. It includes collecting field data, but it does not include sediment modeling. So any clarifying questions on sort of the difference of those 2 or anything from the work group that folks want to add in just for extra context here? Not seeing any hands, so I'm going to move us along. So I guess that's sort of the first question. And if you could just advance quickly to the second one, Terry, just for overview. The sort of second question that I see, which I think is related, is really this use of sediment modeling paragraph, which includes the edits that were provided to Terry. So I think whether or not we move forward with version A or version B, we'll still want to have some conversation around this use of sediment modeling paragraph. And those are sort of the 2 pieces that I'd like to focus our conversation on. So if you can go back to the first slide with the 2, version A, version B. And I was going to try to ask you all for hands, but now the way my Teams is set up, I don't know if I can see all of you at once. Let me see if I can change that. But
I could stop
maybe
sharing if you'd like.
yeah, maybe
well,
just briefly, that would be great. Maybe I'll just open it up for any quick comments, and then I'd love to just get a temperature check on version A, which is includes the sediment modeling. And if you remember, 0 is absolutely no way. 5 is love it, no edits, on board. Amanda.
Hey, Stacy, just process for
Sure.
for me at least. I think I would need to have the conversation about the use statement first.
Okay.
Prior to determining whether I'd be a version A or version B.
Other thoughts on process? I will say I was out all last week, so if I'm a little scrambling, that's trying to get all the ducks together. But that makes sense. I think there's a question of whether that's included regardless. But happy to start with the use of sediment modeling. Do you actually mind pulling that back up, Terry, just so we can look at the original or the red line version?
Sure.
Great.
Okay.
So I guess same question for this. I'm curious, initial reactions, comments to either version, the original or the track changes, or just this concept of including some framing language around how any sediment modeling would be used. Dave?
If I excuse me, if I understand this right, the language that's currently up makes sense to me, given the information that was provided to us by the IRST folks. So regardless of whether we, recommend that we spend money to have sediment modeling done, if it is done, then it would be limited to what we see here. If people agree, that's in red. However, if you decide not to pursue the modeling, but just collect data, then this is at least moot at this point, but might come down the road as maybe those models are refined or whatever. Do I understand that correctly then?
Yes, that is my understanding, and looking to Terry if there's any clarity. I think the thinking was that in version A, if sediment modeling is included, this would be also included. And if the group decides to vote to move forward with the version B, this would still be included to provide that context. Is that right, Terry?
Yes, and just to add clarity there, the version B is a hybrid of options 1, field data only, and full settlement modeling, in the sense that it goes beyond what's option 1 in the road scoping proposal to include collecting field data for the sediment modeling, but not doing the modeling itself, which sort of suggests that down the road there may be a push to do the sediment modeling, and thus maybe a use statement like this is valuable. And Dave certainly asked that question of the IRST: what does it mean to collect the field data but not do the modeling? I may be misstating that, but that was sort of the basic idea, Dave, I think.
Other
Yeah,
comments, questions?
I was just going to say, just to follow up on that real quickly. I mean, I've been on projects where, for whatever reason, the analysis tools are not quite there, but there's nothing wrong with collecting data if that data is important to collect at this time. So that was one of the points I was trying to make. So if folks believe that's important, then I don't see anything wrong with collecting the data if you want to spend the money to do that.
Other sort of general comments, questions? I guess I was hearing, Dave, that you are generally okay with the track changes version, that aligns and addresses some of the questions you'd raised. Yeah, okay, great. Anyone else? You're all uncharacteristically quiet, so I will take that as maybe generally this is looking okay with the tracked changes version.
Stacy, I think the what's on the screen is a little bit of a mixture of two.
Oh,
That's
apologies.
no, it's an artifact of copying from Word into PowerPoint and because originally it just, the original phrasing had something along the lines of everything without the underline. So it said, given this information, the AMC will not use the results of this modeling for rule changes. Rather, and then the other part without, and whatever you folks want to do is fine, but I'm just trying to clarify that, is this,
Then,
as
yeah,
we,
I apologize. If this is wrong, let's pull up the version B because I was just trying to capture the tracked changes, one that was shared with everyone. So that was just a mistake on the PowerPoint.
sure.
I
Emily,
don't
can
want
you go ahead
to
and
lead us
pull up
astray.
that version?
Yeah, I can pull up version B.
Thank you.
Oh, I see. The four rule changes that's a strikeout.
Sorry, it's just taking me a moment. I've apparently a million windows open, which is odd. Can everybody see that all right?
Yes.
If you, yeah,
Where should I go to?
it's
Page 3.
yeah, right there.
And this should be the same in both versions, right, Terry? There was no change between these two.
I think that's correct. I'm pretty sure.
To make that just a
Oh,
little bit bigger on my side.
This one I modified. I think they're in spirit they're the same, but I modified since it's not doing the modeling, it's the AMC will not use the results of settlement modeling that may come out of this project. So you can kind of see between project and as there's a underlying breaks. So I added that just to distinguish. The spirit is still the same. It's just reworded slightly since it's not doing the modeling in this version.
Well, I apologize if I have just introduced more confusion. That was not my intention. I was just trying to copy the language so we could all look at it.
Just to put it side by side, here's the one from A. I'll get rid of it in a second, but
Oh, great.
A versus B.
And Wendy, I saw your hand go up. You're on mute, I think.
I was just going to ask if we could use the versions that were sent out. I might just be completely confused, but I thought that in an email we got sent a version A and a version B, and what's on the screen doesn't look like those to me.
I'm pretty sure they are.
Yeah, this is version 4B.
I think this is B. It has,
Yes,
it looks
this-
like a redlined version between A and B to me, so maybe
No,
that's what you meant.
all I did is copy paste this in just now to have them next to each other. That was just now.
Oh, you mean the comment?
This right here, but that's new.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
So that you guys could see both, and I put 4A next to it. I'll delete that, but I did that so you could see both, since there's discussion about how they slightly changed between the two. That'll go away.
Stumbling over the versions here, apologies. But this should be what you've all gotten in those Word documents.
So I do have one comment if I could jump in.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at the one on the top. And both of them, depending on which one we went with, would have the same issue. I think there's a slight substance and grammatical change that would help with this, because I think that first line where it says sediment modeling that may come out of this project is as an indication of measures of individual sediment delivery points or individual road segments. isn't this, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the sediment modeling not just showing you delivery points or individual road segments? It's also, it's what it's doing is showing you amounts, right, of
Correct.
sediment.
Yeah.
And so, shouldn't that actually read, the AMC will not use the results of the sediment modeling that may come out of this project as an indication of actual sediment amounts or measures of actual sediment, comma, delivery points, comma, or individual road segments, right? Because the way this is written, it says points and road segments. It doesn't say anything about amount of sediment, which I think is the actual thing that's being modeled. It does in the second part. Sort of. It even there it says sediment delivery. So it's ambiguous whether that's talking about delivery points or delivery amounts. But
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Seth.
Mhm.
Amanda, see your hands up.
Yeah, thanks, Stacy. So I prefer that language to not be included and for it to just say that AMPC will not use it for rule changes, in so much as the quote from Dubé et al. Specifies those specific measures. And this is saying, given this information. So I don't think that we should repeat it. I think that we should probably just use the same language from Dubé et al., given its specificity and clarity. And both removed the 4 rule changes. That piece for me and my constituents is extremely important, that we're very clear and very specific about that.
Is there a way to, because I guess as illustrated by my poor translation to the PowerPoint, my concern, I guess, is the way it was drafted before was very broad. And then I think that the edits that I believe maybe Wendy provided or someone provided to constrain a little bit actually what we're talking about seemed appropriate. Does this language, adding the actual sediment amounts, individual sediment delivery points, or individual road segments, including that as well as for rule changes, or is your preference to keep it at that very broad level? I don't think I'm being very clear with my question, but is there a version of modifying this that is workable if we're a little more clear about what this could be used for or not?
I guess my question back to you, Stacy, is, the rule changes part is probably most important to Associated Oregon loggers, but I just want to make sure that we're not missing something. If we include this language that seems to be more specific and reiterates what Dubé et al. Is saying, does it leave any room for the results of the sedimentation to be utilized for rule changes, point blank? And I don't know the answer to that, but that would be my concern.
Mm-hmm.
This is Casey. Can you hear me, Stacy?
Yep.
What if, as a compromise, we include we adopt the language that Wendy has drafted, putting constraints on kind of the possible realm of rulemaking, and include the quote from Dubé et al. Just to give it context?
Do you want me to respond?
That was
Casey?
a general question, but if you have thoughts, sorry, I'm trying to I guess bouncing in my head is whether there's a way to say what you're trying to articulate, Amanda, but also address, I think, the concerns that a few of us have that that could be interpreted very broadly. And I wonder if it's just maybe a rewrite of somehow expressing like that this modeling on its own isn't appropriate for rule change, but that it could inform, and I'm not wordsmithing very well aloud, but maybe just turning it around a little bit. But I'll let you respond because I didn't come up with a solution yet.
I guess my concern is that the quote from Dubé et al. Is very clear, and the more we manipulate the language that was included in that research, the further we possibly get away from the intent.
Other thoughts, questions on this?
This is Casey again. I think we're in a place where we may not reach agreement, but I think it is important to remember that what we're talking about is here and in the next years ahead, with sediment modeling done in Oregon to inform aquatic resources related rules and practices in Oregon forests. So I think we would do a tremendous disservice to not, if we just said no new rules in any way it can be informed by this modeling, because it really does beg the question of why do the modeling. And I think we all understand that there is a lot of value in the model under certain constraints.
Emily?
Yeah, something that might make sense would be to say would that make it less confusing?
Seth, and I think we're reading, so go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer leaving the first part of that on there. And to respond to Casey, I think what this is saying is that is the entire package, the entire suite of information could be relied upon for a rule conversation, but this alone cannot be. And doubling down on the idea that sure it could be, there is some realm of possibility, only makes those who are concerned more concerned. And so that doesn't necessarily help, I think, the side of the house, the side of this group that is concerned that this very widely and really widely understood to be inaccurate modeling exercise could, in some people's minds, be used to change rule by itself, is
Yeah.
very concerning.
I think I'm trying to wrestle with like how to capture that point because I do think that there is agreement there. Maybe I'm wrong, but that on its own, this shouldn't drive.
How does this look this way if we added a sentence at the start?
Amanda?
Yeah, I guess I am still concerned with the open-ended, that not alone. To me, that still means that we absolutely feel comfortable utilizing known bad science, bad numbers as a feature of rule change. I just feel like that's a pretty damaging precedent.
Would it be what are your thoughts on, I think the sort of trends and broader analysis could inform rule change, but this on its own, I mean, I'm just looking at the Dubay language in that sort of second part. And sorry, I saw a bunch of hands. Julie, maybe, and then Amanda? Or did Julie, you put your hand down?
Yeah, you said what I was going to say, that it's really more trend that might be useful.
I mean, is it possible to better articulate that, again, like on its own, this wouldn't be used for rule change, but as it says in that second part of Dubay, I think that the information from this analysis could be used in broader trends assessments or something to that effect. Dave?
Just briefly, one thing that kind of bothered me, and the IRST really pinpointed this, and maybe we should get their opinion on this, but even in trends, without couching those trends with what the error bars are telling us, and that's what IRST came back to me with, was that the error bars could be extremely wide. And so, without couching that, we may mislead anyone that even a trend could be way off. And so, I would suggest that if we do this, that we make sure that the people understand where the error analysis leads one to potentially be. So that I would think we'd want to add that if we're going to go down this path.
Other thoughts from folks on the working group who haven't spoken up? Because I believe that this was coming out of that. Oh, Wendy, go ahead.
Sorry, I went ahead of the working group, but I just was saying, I think I'd like to include both points, the points that Dave is raising about possibly some specificity about the kinds of errors that might exist, but I think it's also important to say that this can be used for the work of the AMPC and IRST in future, because gathering the data and then saying we can't use it in any way strikes me as a waste of the resources.
Other thought on this? And I will be limiting us to our line editing on this because we do have some restrictions on time. Seth, go ahead.
I do think that first sentence needs a lot of work. That first of all, the AMC doesn't make the rules.
Yeah.
And so we cannot do rule changes. I think the sentiment here is that the AMC would not rely upon this information as an indication that rules need to be changed. Ultimately, we would rely on a lot of additional information. And I think what you all are saying is that this, we certainly, we would see this information. But, in a scenario where you had information coming back from this, and it was showing, these wide swaths of some were reduced and others were still high. And I just, the concern is from I think that you're hearing from some of the landowner community is that if people were looking at that and saying, well, this didn't reduce the sediment enough, and it's like, well, do we actually really know that? In order to actually really know that, I would think you'd actually have to have a different type of a study that would not be you relying upon a model. You'd actually have to do a before after sort of design study to look at actual sediment amounts and then use actual BMPs. So I think what we're saying is very much the case that These sediment models by themselves should not be used in that way. And any sort of indication that people think that no, they could be is concerning.
I did a very poor job in trying to capture maybe that sentiment. I just put it in the chat. Amanda, go ahead. Just trying to articulate, I think, what you were saying. Amanda, go for it.
Yeah, and I I appreciate that framing, Seth. For me and the folks that I represent, I think again, I would take it one step further. I think that the modeling and the trends that we might see from the modeling may indicate where we need to do more research, but by no means do those trends indicate that a rule needs to be changed. So even saying that the modeling alone or this, specific thing alone, it could drive more research, but I don't think the modeling in any way indicates that a rule needs to be changed. Is basically what I'm saying. So maybe it's semantics, but again, words matter a lot in this context. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I think that we can absolutely utilize modeling to inform where additional research may be necessary, but it's that additional research that would, drive the indication of a need or no need for rule change rather than the modeling being the thing that created that indication.
Emily, would you mind just deleting that 4A one since I think you're actively
Yeah.
editing the other? Yeah, just so we can look at that and maybe, yeah. I'm curious from folks we haven't heard from yet, thoughts on this or any creative thinking we have to work through this, Will?
So, Stacy, I like what you put up there in the chat. I think it's clearer that we are going to inform us to do other things, not necessarily make a rule change. So I would love to see us have a conversation now about your comment in the chat as a way to address that.
Appreciate that. Maybe before we go there and give folks another second to look at it.
And I did
Anyone
copy
else?
paste that into
Oh, thank you.
here, what you put in the chat. So I don't know if that would be the way we'd want to fit it.
And I guess I was
Thank you.
frankly just thinking that that would be the only sentence, and maybe that doesn't maybe that doesn't address some of the other concerns. But instead of trying to nuance that, maybe just zooming out a little bit and being clear about the intention.
So Emily, don't change anything yet, but that's exactly where I was going, was that might be the only piece below the piece pulled out.
That was my intention.
Gotcha.
Other comments, questions? Dave?
Just quickly, just to reinforce what I was saying, if you want to go this route, that's fine with me. But I really think that, I mean, until we got that information from IRST about how far off some of these modeling could be, if you could maybe add something to the effect that the AMC may use modeling results to inform broader trend detection or analysis, complete with a level of uncertainty or something that tells people, informs them how potentially variable these results could be. Because 10 years from now when we're gone, if this is looked at, people may not think about that, but we should let them know that this could be highly uncertain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate Dave's thoughts on that.
I saw Amanda, and then I'm going to go to the folks I haven't heard from yet.
Yeah, sorry, Stacey.
No, you're good.
But just as far as the last piece of that sentence, the would not use the modeling results independently, that's not very descriptive to me. Not use them independently for what? to what end. So I do really appreciate the not, I think including the what we can use them for and what we cannot use them for, having both of those things in there is very important to me.
Yeah.
That we don't just include what they could be used for, but what they cannot be used for too. So I don't know that I have a good idea there, Emily, where your cursor is of what to include, but would not use the modern modeling results
Would it-
to.
I mean,
I don't know. I
coming
mean, we just talked about like the rule change piece. So yeah, Terry.
coming back to Seth's earlier point, maybe it would not use the modeling results to recommend rule changes or something like that, because Seth's right. It's not the AMC making rule changes, but what comes downstream.
I guess I would just ask to make sure there's some, whether it's independently or modeling results alone. I do think that that is sort of the crux of what we're trying to say, I think.
We could say something like, would not use the modeling results as the sole basis for recommending rule changes.
I like
So-
that, Wendy.
Or what about, instead of
What-
sole basis, what about as a basis? Because it seems like you shouldn't use it as a basis at all to recommend a rule change.
Hmm.
You could use it in your analysis and maybe your design for a future, for a different study or a different analysis of some sort, but should not be used as a deciding factor, proposed rule change with ABC as your reasons for the rule change, and one of those is sediment modeling. It shouldn't be on the list.
Great. Thanks, Emily, for tracking the real-time
Yeah,
edits.
I'm trying, guys. I'm sorry.
Adam?
Yeah, I think it'd be best to follow what's quoted there. I feel like if we get too far outside of that and describing processes that should or should not happen with these results, I think the optics looks really bad on that. Just, I can understand the point of what's described in that Dubé quote, but then turning around and saying that we shouldn't follow a certain process or it should head in a certain direction, I feel like it's getting a little bit outside of the scope of what was initially intended with this discussion.
Are you concerned most with that first sentence, Adam, or just that whole new paragraph is concerning?
I think anything around mentioning rule change, and I think that just that first sentence, given this information, I think is sufficient for what we were initially trying to achieve with this. But that's just more from kind of the optics of what we're trying to do or prevent. Does that help clarify that?
I think so. Josh, and then maybe I'll come back to you to make sure.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was on the work group, and I was really just kind of looking to have the Dubé quote, and something like the first sentence below the Dubé quote. We're not going to use the modeling as an indication of actual sediment amounts. The behavior of individual sediment delivery points or the behavior of individual road segments. And I think that carries with it a pretty clear implication that we're not going to be saying, oh, we need a rule change because look at the volumes of sediment coming off of, these crossings or whatever. I mean, any rule change would rely on saying, yeah, this is actual harmful levels of sediment amounts and not, a general indicator or estimation that would, focus future efforts or give us some idea of, relative shifts between treatments or landscape locations. So yeah, I don't know. I really personally just lean towards having just the Dubé quote or just having something that says, it has the Dubé quote and then says, yeah, we're not going to use these results to say this is how much sediment is, hitting the stream system, in actual mass or volume. But I don't want to get trying to label every possible area we could use the results for, or every area that we won't use the results for. I think that's just, optics aside, I think that's also just not, that's getting outside of what we should be doing. I don't think it's our job to completely prescribe what future people can do or can't do. I I think we just need to say what the limits are, and go from there.
So Josh, just to make sure I understand, because Emily was sort of real-time editing
Yeah.
as this paragraph looks now, does that work or do you still have concerns with it? I guess I'm not totally clear.
I would say if we're going to add a second sentence to that, I think I would be wanting to say something like sediment modeling results, um, could be used to inform, further study and analysis.
Mhm.
Leave it at that. I mean, I think that makes it pretty clear that we're not going to go into rule changes, based on sediment modeling, but that we might do future work based on sediment, that could inform future work. That future work could lead to rule changes. That's our job. If we can, prove it's necessary, but I just really want this to focus on what is scientifically valid and not on what is like not some kind of being prescriptive, and explicit in every what can it do, what can it do. I think that can be figured out pretty well. I just want to make it clear that, this is informational. It can inform future work, and give us some idea of what's going on, but it's not actual sediment delivery.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with how Emily's got that the non-quote paragraph now.
Mhm.
But yeah, anyway, I'm not into adding a lot of detail or prescription.
Appreciate that. And just a time check, I'm going to cut us off with the line editing at 2. So, because we actually do need to get to a vote. Hopefully we can. I know this is more crunch than anyone would prefer. I guess I think this is getting closer. I'm not sure it addresses everyone's concerns still. Before I go to Amanda, is it, if we delete that whole, if we just keep the Dubé quote, I mean, I feel like I was sort of hearing people suggest that a little bit. Does that get us closer, or is that where we are now with both paragraphs closer to where we want to be? Just wanted to throw that into the mix because I feel like I was hearing people sort of suggest that, but not directly. Amanda? Or, yeah.
Yeah. I think I was pretty clear with my expectations out of this use quote earlier. So at this point, I'd be a no on the sediment modeling, given this specific language. We deleted everything that I needed in it. So, I just wanted to put that on the record for folks. To me, if there are individuals that are uncomfortable indicating that these results are not appropriate for recommending rule changes, then that indicates that there are folks that think that they could be. So, that's just something that I can't get on board with for our constituency. So I don't think there's anything that's untrue in the use statement. I think that it is all true. But at the end of the day, our goal in this group in the Adaptive Management Program Committee is to look at the scientific literature and the results of the research and then make a recommendation to the board. And if that is our goal and that is our mission and intent, then this doesn't really identify how we should or should not utilize the results in that intent. So that's just where I'm at.
Appreciate that. Other thoughts on this version, and then I'm going to move us back to sort of the broader question around, because I think this language would exist regardless, but there is a decision to make whether it's just the field data collection or the sediment modeling is included. Any final thoughts or ways to thread the needle here that we haven't discussed?
Maybe one quick thought, and this is to throw out to Amanda. Amanda, what if there was something in there that said that I think we were getting around this alone wouldn't be used to determine a rule change. And I know I hear Josh's point there, but I wonder if we go back to that there's a lot of information here that needs to be done. Future study and analysis is really what this could inform. That could inform a future rule change, but in and of itself, this modeling work is not going to inform a future rule change. So I'm just curious, can we get to the sweet spot there? I like this language, but I do see the point here also is that we want to be very careful to not exploit this work beyond what it can be used for.
And I do think there is agreement for that. And I guess we're just struggling to get the language, the right, like you said, that sweet spot.
Yeah, Jason, I appreciate that. And I probably prefer the language that Seth had presented of, sediment modeling results would not be used as the basis for a rule change. Indicating that they, which is a different way of saying that they wouldn't be used kind of alone, but, it gets more to the point that that I'm concerned with, I guess. And if folks are comfortable with that, I'd be significantly more comfortable with that language.
Josh?
Yeah, so that sediment modeling results alone would not be used as the basis to suggest rule changes, but can be used to inform future study or analysis. I think that if that works for Amanda, I think that's good because that is scientifically accurate. That's a scientifically accurate statement of what it can do. And it is going to be up to the AMC to recommend rule changes in the future, right? So it's not like if there's sediment modeling results and we didn't get every circumstance detailed here, oh, that's it. Now sediment modeling has to be used by a future AMC for rule changes. It's like, no, that when it comes back around, the AMC is going to have that decision there about whether there's a rule change recommendation. So I like this language as well. I just don't want to get caught into like trying to game out every possible scenario it could or could not be used in. I think that's just going to introduce a lot of error and keep us from finishing that. But I like this how it is. I'm happy with this, and I'm also happy with just the Dubé quote only. Either is good for me.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate that. Wendy?
Hi, my concerns were taken care of by what's been typed in since, but I just agree with everything Josh just said. This language works for me. It seems to be changing now.
Yeah, let's just
but
not edit for a second.
Sorry, sediment modeling results alone would not be used, et cetera. That sentence is okay with me as is. And I think it resolves what we've been talking about. And I feel like it's kind of a good time to move on to voting.
Thank you, Wendy. I was hopeful that we could get there because I really do think that we generally agree. Just it's not been articulated super well. So I will, oh, it disappeared. I will take your prompt, Wendy, and I will.
Apologies. I'm
sorry.
just saving right now so that we don't
Okay.
lose this. So it will be back up in a second, but apparently when I save it, it doesn't show up for you guys for a moment. So I just want to make sure that we don't lose what we just did. So 1 second.
Appreciate that. I will take your prompt, Wendy, and then move us to looking at the question of version A, version B. And I guess well, a few ways probably to handle this, but curious if we want to do a temperature check on version A, which would be the sediment modeling with this language that we just worked through. And if folks could, again, I can't see all your hands at once, I apologize, but I'm curious generally where folks are feeling about moving forward with version A, and I will do the same for version B. But I just want to get a quick sense of where everyone is and how much conversation we should try to have in the 30 minutes we have remaining. So version A, sediment modeling with this language. Oh. Okay.
And Stacy, I'm good with that combination.
Okay,
with
I'm
Casey.
seeing 3s, 4s, 4s. I'm a 4. Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. Would it be time? Would anyone like to make a motion, or do we want to discuss also do a temperature check for version B? Because that was leaning a little more to the 4s and 3s, 4s, 5s than I was anticipating. So temperature check. Oh, yep, please. Help
Can
me
I
out,
ask?
Seth.
There was only one 5 there that I saw, and maybe I missed some, but Wendy, you were a 5. What was your 5 for? Can I ask?
I think that it makes sense to include the modeling, but I think that there's the language you were just talking about had safeguards or adequate to have the uncertainty about the specific results of the modeling worked into how we use the information. And I like that sentence that we just worked out based on what Amanda said.
Oh, I thought we were voting on the using the modeling with this. Was that what we were voting on, Stacy?
Sorry.
Yes, that version A, which is doing the modeling and then including this language in there.
I thought that we were voting on that too. I guess my answer confused you somehow, Seth. What?
Yeah.
Those are the reasons I supported it. Does that answer your question?
5 is support, right?
Yeah.
No, 5 is 5 is support.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good.
Okay.
I thought 5 was an impasse. I understand
okay.
your confusion now because I'm confused. My bad.
Sorry, I was not super clear. Yeah, 0 is no way. 5 is great. I'm on board. So I guess again, I'm hearing a little more agreement than maybe I thought. So I would, if someone wanted to propose a motion for version A, we could also do a temperature check on B, but I am mindful of the time and I feel like we may be able to get there given the work that we've done.
I'll make that motion with version A with the modified language as written.
I'll second it.
And I will second. No. Go ahead, Julie.
Either
And
one.
just-
All good.
Procedurally, I've got a motion drafted that I can pull up if you want to stop sharing. If you folks feel like you're ready to.
I was just going to go to discussion.
Gotcha.
So maybe while you pull that up, we'll just
Mhm.
open it up for discussion of the motion to vote to move forward with version A, which roads, hydrologic connectivity, and sediment modeling, including the use of sediment paragraph that we just worked on together. Amanda?
Maybe this is procedurally not appropriate, but as part of our discussion, could we do a temperature check on no sediment modeling?
Yes, we definitely can.
Just to see where folks are at. That might be helpful for when we get to a vote.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't hear anyone clamoring for that at the top, but okay. So we have a motion on the table as part of our discussion. Let's do a temperature check. Version B, which is field data, but no sediment modeling, including the use of sediment language that we wordsmithed as a group. That would also be included.
Casey, this is Casey. I'm probably one.
Being more middle to low, or sort of a large spread. Some threes, some twos, maybe a 5 in there. Anyone want to speak who was a 4 or 5 to version B?
I'll speak up. I'm fine with I'm a 4 on either, because if we're collecting the data and doing the modeling, great. We might get some useful information out of it. If we're collecting the data but not doing the modeling, doesn't preclude doing the modeling later. And that's kind of my main thing, is we're leaving our options open and we have that thorough groundwork data, that because you get one shot at collecting the baseline data, and that's now. So as long as we're getting a broad range of data, I'm happy, because we can always do the modeling later, or do it now, and then if sediment models improve, or when we get another 5 or 10 years down the road on data, we can do the sediment modeling again. So I like either, because it keeps the options open, and it gets us a nice thorough data set for the baseline. And that's what I think is important, is that we can see what progress we are making with the new road rules on protecting water quality and aquatic habitat. So I'm good either way.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Josh. Other folks on the 4 or 5 side that want to speak to version B? Amanda?
Yeah, I was a 4 for the one that we're currently on with the motion, but I just did a 5 for this one because I still am really uncertain of the usefulness of the data for whatever its use for the sediment modeling, given the significant error of being 95% potentially undercounting and nearly 9,000% overcounting sediment. So that's just still makes me pretty unclear of the usefulness of it in general.
Thanks for that. Other thoughts, maybe folks who have more concerns with version B?
I guess for me, and I'm somewhat in line with Josh a little bit now, and thanks for walking through that, Josh, is that, I can see value in both now with the paragraph that we've created, in that you either grab the data and do modeling later if you choose to do so, or you do modeling now. But with the paragraph we have, is that's going to lead to further analysis and data collection potentially. So on both sides, there's kind of we're going to flesh this out a little bit more before we get to any sort of decision on whether it's even going to come close to making a recommendation for a rule change. So I think with the paragraph, once again, under the motion that we have, that seems to be at least a little stronger for me, but I can see both sides now. And once again, Josh, appreciated your explanation there.
Additional discussion on either option? I apologize. I should have paused longer to do the temperature check, but I thought we were closer. So process-wise, maybe in a little bit of a a pause, but because we do have a motion on the table for version A with the paragraph.
Casey, I
And
think we
Terry,
should
you
just
said
go
you have
ahead
a
if
written
there's no
motion.
more discussion.
Oh, sorry, there were two. I'm not sure who. I heard Casey and someone else. I apologize.
I think it was Jason, right?
Yeah, I was just asking to pull up the motion here just to make sure.
Yeah, thank you. Casey, you were gonna add something?
Oh, I was just saying if discussion is over, we should probably take the vote. Yeah.
Just doing a final process check. Any other? Terry, looked like you were gonna chime in.
There's one thing that hopefully is quick, and that's that there was some lack of clarity from the IRST on the Eastern Oregon database. And since Sean, I think you're on, if you want to maybe just mention you're seeking clarity on specifically, is it pulling the data or pulling, I think it was the metadata maybe, but Sean, please correct me. And I'm sorry to mention this last minute, but it seems important to have that clear in the report.
Yeah, I don't know. Would you be able to pull up that sentence there? Sorry, Terry.
Yeah, I apologize. Hopefully this will be quick. Emily, if you want to bring up 4A and scroll down to the
And Terry, procedurally, is this another? Would this be another motion, another vote? This is Casey. I'm just wondering.
well,
Like we're on a vote right now. But
yeah,
is this going to be part of
I
that
think
vote?
technically, yeah, technically it probably would be. So it's like that first paragraph under second priority. So I apologize. Maybe you want to just say you folks to clarify this later. That's another option. But for the IRST to move forward, they're going to need clarity on that item. Extract data from the relevant studies. Provide those data in a database. So that could be a lengthy discussion, unfortunately. I'm sorry
I would propose we consider the motion that's on the table and seconded.
Yeah.
We finish that discussion and then we transition to this.
Okay.
Amanda?
Yeah.
I thought the motion was to approve the draft report, which would include this. So it seems like we would need to solve this.
No, the motion that
part
was
of the
made,
report.
the motion that was made, and correct me if I'm wrong, let's see who made the motion. I'm trying to remember.
It was Julie, and the motion that I made was in response to accepting option A with the text that we worked on.
And that was
So it is the
specific
report.
to the roads, right? Or was it the full report?
I had framed it specific to the roads, but
It was just the sediment part.
perhaps
Yeah.
I should have done it as approving the whole report, but that seemed to be the most difficult piece that I think we're very close to getting there on. And my hope was we could make that motion, get the vote, and then look at the whole thing and say, we're good, and then vote as we'll send this over to the board. Does that make sense process-wise, or feel free to propose another approach if that doesn't make sense?
I agree. It seems like there's some bites that if we can get them done one at a time, then we can approve the whole thing.
Julie, maybe I thought Jason made the initial motion.
Oh, actually, I seconded. Yes, never mind.
Yeah, so maybe I would offer a friendly amendment to the motion for clarity's sake. That the friendly amendment would be that the motion would state that AMPC approves the first priority option A language as edited during this meeting.
Sure. Emily, if you stop sharing, then I can pull that up. Or maybe I can already pull it up. Let's see here.
just to make sure that it's captured, because I thought that the motion was specific to option A,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
could
Okay,
leave it
so
up to interpretation as the total package.
so the deputy manager recommendation approves. Say it again, please. I didn't capture it all, Amanda. That was
First priority, option A language is drafted or edited. Just to make it very clear that we're talking about that, the hydrologic connectivity piece, but it's a friendly amendment, so that would have to be approved by the initial motion maker.
Yeah, and I'd be okay with that, Amanda.
Thanks, Jason. Don't want to assume.
and then I'll hold off on this. I should probably delete this part here, right?
Yes. That was not part of his motion.
Deputy Program Committee approves the first priority of research agenda report draft 4A as edited during the July 7th, 2025 meeting.
Require it seconds for the friendly amendment.
I second it.
Okay, so Wendy seconds. We're all clear. We're just voting on this piece. And then hopefully we'll get a motion for the whole package. Terry, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to, depending on the complexity of that question. address that.
Right.
But let's table that for a second.
Absolutely.
So I think unless there's any final discussion, we'll move to a roll call vote on the motion before us, which is related to first priority, the research agenda for the roads, version 4A with the edits that we discussed related to the use of the sediment model.
Okay. Seth Barnes,
Yes.
Dave Buckney,
Yes.
Stacy Detweiler,
Yes.
Julie Furman,
Yes.
Wendy Gerlach,
Yes.
Casey Kula,
Yes.
Jason Robeson,
Yes.
Josh Seeds,
Yes.
Amanda Sullivan Astor,
Yes.
Will Tucker.
Yes.
Passes 10 yes, 0 no.
Thank you all for the creative thinking to get us there. Given the time, I'm gonna full speed ahead. So Terry, can you give a 30-second, what do you need from AMSI as far as clarity on the Eastern Oregon steep slope?
Yeah, I think it says extract the data. And so the question is it extracting the data, extract the data from relevant studies? Is it the metadata or is it pulling the actual data, which is a lot more work and it's more challenging because you have very different methods. And so the data are not easy to compare. Whereas if you're pulling the metadata, and Sean, please jump in if I misstated anything.
No, that's great, Terry. It's just treating these data sets like another publication, right? You record that it's out there, you record what's in it, you discuss it in the literature review, but just the language that came into this final was saying, well, compile these data into a database. And it's like, they're going to be all different kinds of data. So you're not actually going to be able to pull all this data and somehow stick it together in one database was the concern that the IRST had.
So Josh and then Julie and Amanda put something in the chat. So Josh, want to start?
Yeah, I think Amanda and I are basically saying the same thing, which is that that was a piece taken. So we took kind of like the second option, with the first being the most thorough, and the database was something from the first option. So I don't know what. So I would kind of bump that back to IRST and say, whatever you were saying in the super deluxe version, as far as like a database, that's what we're talking about here. So whatever that is, I think IRST already knows because I was just grabbing their idea from the super deluxe version and putting it into the slightly less deluxe version, the rapid systematic map, and that was the idea. So whatever IRST meant in the really deluxe version as far as the database goes. This would be my take on it.
I'm seeing head nods, and I think Julie put your hand down. I believe that's also my understanding was we kind of pulled the pieces we liked from the proposal. So, Sean, how do we make that more clear in this document?
Well, I think we can just go with that verbal clarification for now. If you want to, there's some language, I think, in the comment that Terry put in there from me that we could put in there, but I'm not sure it's critical at this point.
Folks think we need to amend this, or is this enough direction?
If Sean thinks it's good, I'm good with that.
Okay. Amanda?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the scoping proposal number 6 under the rapid assessment, the rapid map. It as far as what wasn't included compared to what did you say, super deluxe version? Josh, it said no compilation of available empirical data sets. So I think it's that available empirical data set. So just like you say in there, like, yes, we might be able to get some, we may not be able to get others. It seems like that's sort of what we were looking for. So there's a recognition by this group that not every, piece of empirical data and every piece of research may be extractable.
And, as I recall our discussions with the IRST, they were a bit different here. They were about saying, okay, there's papers out there that we'll get as part of the literature review, but then there's also some data sets out there where there's no published paper that's, going to show up. So the idea was, well, let's look for some of those data sets also and say, okay, here's a list of those that are available that might be relevant to this issue.
Thank you, Emily, for editing, or whoever is editing. Oh,
Does that extract data metadata from the relevant studies when possible, and provide those data in a database for potential future analysis? Does that capture it?
I'd say it would be search for additional data sets that may be relevant for potential future analyses. So it's not extracting the data from the studies
gotcha.
that we're already cataloging, because we're going to catalog those and say they're available, but it's for data sets that are not in published studies. So also search for other data sets.
That would be at the beginning of the sentence.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Mm.
And include those in the review. Again, we're not about extracting the actual data there and putting it in somewhere else. It's more just saying, identifying there is this data set here. It can be used. And again,
Is
maybe
that
if
what
you
you're
begin with search for data sets. And
Terry, is
include,
that? I'm trying to remember. This is forcing me to have to remember what our vote was back then. Is that what our is that what our vote was? I recall number the like super deluxe version had, go search out all of these unpublished data sources and do all of these other things. And the second one was more looking at the published data, I thought. At least that's what's ringing in my mind. And now this is starting to change that. I'm not. I'd have to go back and look at what we actually. I'm comfortable with what we voted on. I'm just not completely sure this
Yeah,
now reflects that.
yeah. It wasn't a vote last time. It was sort of a verbal. Let's do the rapid systematic map, but do these number one and number two as well. And number two was not as clearly enunciated, which is why we're doing this. I'm wondering if there's just because of time, I wonder if there's a faster way to wrap this
Yeah,
up.
I just pulled this from the table that Emily put together. So Seth, this should directly reflect what we discussed.
Yeah.
It's not super detailed. Um,
Yeah.
but I think, if we could just put that in there or what was in there before, that folks have had a chance to look at, because I do have a hard stop at 2:30 and I would like us to be able to move through this. So does one of those work for folks? I'm not sure that what's in that table I pulled into the chat fully captured what we had before, but I guess I would prefer to just stick with what we had originally at this point, just given the time.
Yeah, I agree, Stacy. I've got a hard stop too.
I agree.
Okay.
Yep, I agree with
Emily,
Stacy.
do you mind just pulling back in what it was originally? And oh, I don't think that was it.
That's not it.
In the chat it says compile existing data from, if you can copy and paste from the chat, that would be.
Well, sorry, that was what was in the
Oh.
table, but that's not what was in version A.
Sorry.
If you just hit undo, Emily, it should go back.
Ah,
Here, extract data. Okay. So while Emily adds in the previous language that was already in your version A, version B, apologies, I would like to move us to a vote on the whole package. So the only changes are what we just voted on related to the roads. We're keeping this language the same in steep slopes. Would anyone like to make a motion? And maybe Terry, you have some language for us.
Yeah, I do. Can you see that now? Motion to.
Yes. Would anyone like to make a
So moved.
motion?
I make a motion consistent with motion 2 as just put before us.
A second to Wendy's motion?
Will seconds.
Okay. Any final discussion? All right. I think we're good to do a vote, Terry.
Okay. Seth Barnes,
Yes.
Dave Bugney,
Yes.
Stacy Detweiler,
Yes.
Julie Furman,
Yes.
Wendy Gerlach,
Yes.
Casey Kula,
Yes.
Jason Robison,
yes.
Josh Seeds,
Yes.
Amanda Sullivan Astor,
Yes.
Bill Tucker.
Yes.
10 yes, 0 no, motion passes. I guess just real quick, if we, it'd be great to organize a work group to work on the responding to the IRST clarifying questions on the amphibians. And are there several folks who'd like to?
Terry, I can join that. This is Casey.
Casey, thanks, Casey. Anyone else?
I could work on it, however, I know we like to have a different of viewpoints on it, but I do have the time to do it.
Okay.
I can step in there as
Okay.
well, Terry.
Thanks. Okay, I think that's everything we're hoping to cover today. Stacy?
Yes. Thank you all for getting there. I appreciate the creative thinking and willingness to be open to some different solutions, and really appreciate the time. And we've got our first research agenda to send, which is pretty exciting.
Congratulations.
Good job, Stacy.
Yeah.
We made it.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
I made it. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Right.